Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. Welcome to part 2 of this series in which I look at a couple of articles which supposedly use comedy to criticise the men's rights movement. As you saw in part 1, that criticism failed because it relied on false stereotypes, which means it wasn't actually criticism at all, but propaganda. Now, here in part 2, it's a little bit more complex, because the author of this piece is presenting what she thinks our impression of a feminist meeting would be. And she's trying to make the point that this is devoid of reality, that it's all based on false stereotypes. Essentially, she is accusing us of doing what was done to us in part 1. She is accusing us of creating false stereotypes, just like Lucas Gardner created false stereotypes of MRAs in the article I presented in part 1. Now, where this article by Cara Michelle Smith falls down is the fact that these stereotypes about feminists are based in reality. Well, most of them anyway. Now, sure, some of them are exaggerations, but they're still based on actual things, actual people. The blue-haired feminist isn't something created in the imagination of MRAs. They actually exist. They actually go to universities. They actually make a lot of noise and get a lot of attention. They actually have pages on Tumblr. They do exist. And because they do exist, and they are very vocal and get a lot of attention, they therefore are not a false stereotype. Now, obviously, not all feminists have blue hair, but there are some that do exist. So it is not a purely fictitious stereotype. So without any further delay, let's get stuck into the article and see how accurate these stereotypes are. Now, remember, this isn't actually written by an MRA, but this is a feminist's impression of what we think a feminist meeting would be.
The feminists stood in a circle around Katie's kitchen table. A lone pillar candle sat at its center. The candle's flickering wick illuminated the feminists' butter faces. Birth control pills and a half-dozen Devo cups were arranged in the shape of a heart around the candle. It was pink and smelled of peonies, hemp, and Luna bars. "Hello, women," Michaela said kind of abrasively. Her hair was dyed blue and she wore a black t-shirt with the slogan "The future is female" printed across her average chest.
Okay, have we heard anything so far which is unbelievable? The answer is no. We know that some feminists have blue hair. It's perfectly conceivable that they might meet around a kitchen table and wear the future is female t-shirts. Now, the future is female t-shirt, which in recent years has had a bit of a revival, can actually be traced back to the 1970s. Its origin is actually in the feminist lesbian separatism movement. So everything we've seen so far is actually based on real people. Let's continue.
Welcome to the feminist meeting, where we talk about how much we hate men and figure out different ways to ruin their lives.
Feminists sitting around a table discussing how they hate men and want to destroy men's lives. Is this a believable stereotype? Now, we're often told by feminists in the media that this is just propaganda by those evil MRAs, and feminists don't really hate men. Of course not. That's just a stereotype, a false stereotype put out by anti-feminists and incels who can't get laid. But in reality, there are plenty of examples of feminists who openly tell us how much they hate men and blame men for everything. Let me give you an example. Here's an article for the Washington Post written by Susanna Danuta Walters, who is a professor of sociology and director of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies program at Northeastern University. So this isn't just a blue-haired feminist on Tumblr. This is a university professor, a self-proclaimed proud feminist. And her article is called "Why Can't We Hate Men?" Gee, I wonder what her conclusion's going to be. Let's have a quick look at it.
It's not that Eric Schneiderman, the now former New York Attorney General accused of abuse by multiple women, pushed me over the edge. My edge has been crossed for a long time, before President Trump, before Harvey Weinstein, before mansplaining and insults, before live streaming sexual assaults and red pill men's groups, and rape camps as a tool of war and the deadening banality of male prerogative. Seen in this indisputably true context, it seems logical to hate men. I can't lie, I've always had a soft spot for the radical feminist smackdown, for naming the problem in no uncertain terms. I've rankled at the, but we don't hate men protestations of generations of would-be feminists and found the men are not the problem. This system is obfuscation too precious by half. So, in this moment, here in the land of legislatively legitimated toxic masculinity, is it really so illogical to hate men? For all the power of #MeToo and #Time's Up and the women's marches, only a relatively few men have been called to task, and I've yet to see a mass wave of prosecutions or even serious recognition of wrongdoing. On the contrary, cries of witch hunt and the plotted resurrection of celebrity offenders came quick on the heels of the outcry over endemic sexual harassment and violence. But we're not supposed to hate them because #not all men. I love Michelle Obama as much as the next woman, but when they have gone low for all of human history, maybe it's time for us to go all Thelma and Louise and Foxy Brown on their collective butts.
The feminists don't really hate men argument doesn't hold water when there are university professors teaching generations of young women and men that men are to blame for everything, that we should hate men, that violence and wrongdoing only counts when it's a man doing it to a woman. Now, does every single feminist hate men? The answer is no, obviously not. And there are many feminists out there who will protest and say that they love their brothers and father and their husbands or boyfriend or their sons or whatever. But let me be very clear here. If you are a feminist who prescribes to patriarchy theory and you blame all the world's wrongdoings on men and masculinity, and you ignore female wrongdoers or excuse their behaviour, because we all know that women would only ever do something wrong if she's forced into it by a man or she's doing it in self-defense. If you do any of that, if you see the problem as being men and you blame men for everything, then I hate to tell you this, but you're one of those feminists who hate men and you're part of a hate movement. You're no different than someone in a white hood blaming everything on Jews or blacks or whatever.
Yes, that is what we do at these meetings. Xanthippe agreed, high-fiving some of the feminists around her. She was wearing a half-shirt that exposed not her mediocre breasts but her fat stomach cascading over her shorts. It was precisely the kind of a stomach that would kill a healthy, flattering erection. Susan pinched Xanthippe's stomach fat, smiled, and said, "I'm proud of you, Xanthippe."
Once again, this is not a false stereotype, it is actually based on fact. Fat acceptance is part of feminism. In fact, it's been part of feminism for about 40 years now.
"I'm proud of you, too, Susan, whose name used to be Steve," Xanthippe responded. Then they kissed on the lips. "Wow, that's so neat," Michaela said. "It's so great that we can pick our own names and genders."
Once again, this is based on reality. And need I mention, clearly this is a third-wave feminist meeting and not a second-wave feminist meeting. Because if it was a second-wave feminist meeting, they wouldn't be too kind to Susan, whose name used to be Steve. In fact, I'm pretty sure they'd be referring to Susan as Steve, and then condemning him as a man. Anyway, let's continue.
"And make our bodies as gross as possible to men, even though we still need their sperm to procreate because that's what God created us to do."
Okay, we finally seem to have reached something which doesn't seem to be based in reality, and to be honest is a bit of a strange stereotype to be putting on feminists. Of course, I'm talking about the part where it says we still need their sperm to procreate because that's what God created us to do. Now, I'm sure there are many feminists out there who believe in God, but I don't recall ever hearing a feminist say something like that. And I would say it's very much out of character. That's more like something you'd hear a traditional conservative say. So that particular one gets a fail. However, there was another bit to this, which said that they're making their bodies as gross as possible to men. Now, there kind of is a kernel of truth in this. You could argue that unattractive feminists aren't intentionally making themselves unattractive to men, although maybe some are, I don't know. But what you could argue is that there are some feminists who reject societal beauty standards that men typically find attractive, and some of them will reject those beauty standards, and their form of rebellion will be going as far away from them as possible, which in effect makes them unattractive to most men. Now, you could argue that their purpose is to reject the beauty standards and not to be unattractive to men, but like I said, there is a kernel of truth there. I don't think it's 100% accurate or as clear as the other stereotypes that we've seen so far. But anyway, let's continue.
Stop. A feminist screamed in that way women do when they're just looking for attention. I am triggered. Gasp, went the feminists. I am sorry that I triggered you, Michaela replied. What word triggered you, men, sperm, or procreate?
Once again, this stereotype is accurate because it's based on reality. Over the last 10 years, we've often heard feminists talking about things being triggering, even so far as not being able to clap anymore. Now you have to do jazz hands or click your fingers because clapping could be triggering to someone. So yeah, once again, this is not a false stereotype. It is based on reality and is accurate.
Stop. Focus on me. I, too, was triggered, Lena Dunham shouted from the back. Mostly, I was triggered by the word men, because I hate them so. Also, I love having abortions. Having an abortion feels so good. 3 feminists chanted together in sing-song.
Now, does anyone enjoy having an abortion? I would say no. I find it very hard to believe that anyone would enjoy having an abortion. It is surgery after all, and is obviously going to be very physically draining, let alone emotionally and mentally draining as well. However, this is an exaggeration of something that we have actually seen. There are some feminists who say that they're proud of their abortion. I find this a little strange because it's kind of like saying, I'm proud I had my appendix out. I don't know how you can be proud of a surgical procedure. Now, you might say, I'm glad I had my appendix out because if I didn't, it would have burst and possibly killed me. Just like you might say, I'm glad I had an abortion because I was unable to take care of another child or whatever. So I can understand saying that you're glad you made that choice because the consequences would have been bad if you didn't. But I don't understand saying that you're proud of it. That's something different entirely. Now, I do think maybe in some cases this is a backlash against there being a stigma against having an abortion. So those who are saying that they're proud that they had an abortion are fighting against that stigma. I can kind of understand it from that point of view. I still find it a little bit strange though. But anyway, it is an exaggeration of something which does exist. So therefore, this stereotype is in fact built on reality.
All right. Michaela yelled playfully, scratching an itch on the collarbone above her breasts like a tease. I know it's great to have a vagina, because it protects us from being held accountable for our actions.
Well, yes, what is often called the pussy pass is actually real. I mean, just have a look at the sentencing gap. That's the perfect example.
But we're at a meeting. Shana, why don't you kick things off by shrieking about your week? Thanks for that empowering introduction, Michaela, Shana said in a look-at-me kind of way. Well, today marks the 3rd anniversary of me severing ties with my father after I found out he doesn't donate all his money to Planned Parenthood.
Is it inconceivable that a feminist might sever ties with a parent who holds different worldviews? No, not at all. Especially considering a lot of aspects of feminism are very similar to a cult. They don't seem to be very accepting of people with differing views. So I imagine there's quite a few young feminists out there who have gone to university and taken a gender studies course and become very distant from one or both parents because the parents hold a very different worldview.
I celebrated by rewatching Amy Schumer's The Leather Special and having an abortion.
I imagine watching Amy Schumer's The Leather Special would be like having an abortion performed by Freddy Krueger. I don't think that's the type of abortion that anyone would be proud of.
My favorite thing about being a feminist is ignoring facts.
Truer words were never spoken. Feminism, the entirety of feminism is built on ignoring facts, especially when those facts are about male victims of various crimes or injustices. Those facts tend to be just deleted or totally ignored. It's as if they don't exist.
And my second favorite thing about being a feminist is making men buy me stuff even though I'm not going to have sex with them.
I don't know if this stereotype would be associated specifically with feminists, but it most definitely is true with some women. It reminds me of, it must have been about 6 or 7 years ago when I was still using Facebook. I came across a post where a group of women were talking about how bad men are, because every time a man takes them out to dinner and pays for their dinner, the man expects something in return, expects sex or something in return. And I came into the conversation and said, well, there's an easy solution. Why don't you buy your own fucking dinner? It didn't go down too well, as you might imagine. But, that's a simple solution. If you think that accepting a free dinner from someone has expectations to it that you don't want to fulfill, fine. You're an adult, pay for your own fucking dinner. End of story. That way, there's no misunderstanding, right? And you can still enjoy the company of the man that you've gone on the date with. I mean, after all, that's why you went on the date, right? I mean, you didn't go just to get the free dinner, correct? They weren't too happy with that response.
This is my fight song, Take Back My Life song, Prove I'm Alright song, My Powers Turn On, the feminists chanted in unison, completing the ceremonial reciting of Rachel Platten's fight song chorus. That was nothing short of rousing, Shana, Michaela said. Now, Zatharin, tell us how you dismantled the patriarchy this week. Gender is fluid and we're all on a spectrum, Zatharin said, and the feminists nodded solemnly. I had a very productive week. On Thursday night, I wore the outfit, the one women wear when they want a man to flirt with them. Only, when a man finally did ask me for my number, I screeched in my shrillest voice and cut off his penis. Want to see? Oh, do we? The feminists squealed with delight.
Only men are making these decisions? I say we castrate them all.
What do you think about the men who say they can get periods?
They're idiots.
Why do you think we should castrate all men?
Oh, well, then we won't get pregnant, I guess. All the ones who vote that we should not have abortion laws and contraception, let's just fix it. Castrate.
Now, obviously, there aren't hordes of feminists going around cutting off men's penises, right? That's just not reality. I mean, they don't need to do that. They have the legal system. Yeah, unfortunately that joke isn't all that funny, but there was another part of this paragraph which we need to look at, and that's the part where she wears the outfit to go out and get men to flirt with her and then turn them down. Is this based on reality? Well, once again, kind of. We've often heard women complain that when they just go out with friends or whatever, they have guys coming up and hitting on them, and what a hassle it is. Of course, these women are often dressed in such a way as to get male attention. Now, they will argue that they should be able to dress that way, which is true. I don't have a problem with them dressing any way they want. And they will also say things like they dress that way to make themselves feel confident or attractive. Now, the question is, how does dressing in that particular way make them feel confident or attractive? Well, by getting male attention, or by outcompeting their fellow females by getting male attention. So they may not be interested in finding a partner or going home with someone for the night. They may not want countless number of men coming up to them and trying to get their number, especially if they're not attractive men. But dressing that way is designed to get male attention. And if you do get male attention after dressing that way, you can't blame the males. Well, unless you're a feminist, of course, in which case men are to blame for everything.
Catherine pulled out a bloodied paper sack from her purse. The feminist smiled widely. Incredible work, Catherine, Michaela said. One less penis means one less microaggression. I haven't worn a bra in 3 years. Now, let's move on to this week's event calendar. Wait. A tall feminist hissed from the back. I have an announcement for the group and I won't be minimized by you, Michaela, just because you're in a position of power. Michaela shuddered and cupped her incredible hunkers as a sign of solidarity. I would never minimize you, Michaela said slowly, which really sent her vocal fry into overdrive. Please, sister, make your announcement. Thank you for calling me your sister, even though you and I are not related, the tall feminist replied. I'm menstruating and need a tampon. Specifically, I need a tampon for my vagina. As if their lives depended on it, the feminists wildly rummaged through their giant purses stuffed to the brim with Margaret Atwood novels. Voodoo dolls resembling the good guys flew in the air. Me. I found a tampon. Xanthippe said, and the rest of the feminists swooped and hollered and clapped for Xanthippe. Now, I'm going to try and toss this tampon to you, but if you don't catch it, we can try again. Xanthippe tossed the jumbo tampon to the tall feminist, who caught the tampon and immediately did what women do when they do the tampon thing.
What women do when they do the tampon thing. Okay, I did find that quite funny. Now, is this an unbelievable stereotype? Are feminists obsessed with their periods and their vaginas? The answer is yes. Yes, they are obsessed with their periods and their vaginas. Need I mention things like free bleeding, which I believe started as a joke, but many feminists took serious. And then earlier this year there was the story about the woman up in Queensland who makes vagina tea cozies and started making vagina face masks when the coronavirus started to spread. Here's a picture of one of her face masks. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong picture. That's the picture of the predator. Easy mistake to make. Here's the actual picture. Much less scary. Doesn't look anything like the predator at all. Now, the reason why she was making these vagina face masks and tea cozies is because she believes that people think vaginas are ugly. Yeah, that's why men hate looking at them, because men find them so ugly. Yeah. Just, I don't know what we can do about that. That's probably why porn is so unpopular, right? Next.
Like, right there in the middle of the living room. The feminists burst into uproarious applause. Michaela? Susan said. The more we work, the more I'm reminded of the wage gap and how it isn't a myth.
Do I really need to respond to this one? Yeah, it's a legitimate stereotype.
Can we just stop working and rewatch Amy Schumer's The Leather Special? You make a compelling argument, Susan, Michaela said in response to Susan. Does anybody object to watching Amy Schumer's The Leather Special? Or, Lena Dunham said playfully. I could show you some deleted scenes from my HBO show, Girls, because it's sexist if you don't want to see me naked.
Now, we're told constantly that it's wrong to fat shame, but man-shaming is a booming industry. We're told if men don't want to date women over a certain size, then they're shallow men. But at the same time, if a man says that he's happy to date a larger woman, then that's also wrong, and he should be shamed as well. So it seems that men can't make any right choices. If you don't like overweight women, then you're wrong. If you do like overweight women, then you're also wrong. And, this extends even further, not just the body positive fat feminism thing, but apparently if you're a male and you don't want to date a trans woman, then that makes you transphobic. Of course, if you are a male who does like dating trans women, then you're also wrong for saying that you enjoy doing it. You just can't win. Now, my personal opinion is that everyone should be able to date the type of person that they want to. If you're into skinny chicks, or fat chicks, or short guys, or tall guys, or bald guys, or guys with long hair, or trans women, or trans men, or if you're bi, or gay, or straight, or whatever, right? That should be fine. You should be able to make your own choices as an adult. But apparently if you're a man, you can't make a right choice. Any choice you make is automatically wrong. Welcome to feminism.
I discovered Adam Driver before Star Wars. Men steal everything from women. I'm with her. The feminists said, laughing and hugging one another as Lena Dunham plucked the Blu-ray disc from her armpit hair. Soon, they were gathered around the television, the scent of chamomile tea and unwashed dreadlocks drifting through the room stuffed to the brim with smiling, aggressive feminists. With friends like these, Xanthippe whispered to Zatharin, "You really don't need a plan B. Get it?" As if. Zatharin joshed, cupping her itty-bitty titties in a sign of solidarity.
And right at the bottom of the article we have some tags. Feminism, that's fairly self-evident as to why that would be there. Right wing. Now that's a strange one, considering, there's nothing really about this which is right wing. Sexism. Yeah, not exactly sure what about this is sexist either. Sure, it's a stereotypical representation of feminism, but it's a fairly accurate one. Same with misogyny. I'm not exactly sure what about this is misogynist, unless, of course, you're claiming that the feminist movement is misogynist, in which case that's a perfectly acceptable tag. And, of course, men's rights activist, which is there for obvious reasons. So, last episode we saw a stereotype being put forward of MRAs who were angry, violent men who live in their mother's basements because they're losers and plan bomb attacks on feminist meetings because they just hate women and want to victimize them. None of which is accurate, of course. But this particular article, we have a stereotype of blue-haired feminists who sit around a table talking about how much they hate men, and talking about the wage gap, and talking about being triggered, and of course talking about gender issues. All of those stereotypes are legitimate, are real, are based on real-life people. Sure, this exaggerates certain things, and that's what comedy tends to do, but it's all based on reality. I can imagine there being a feminist meeting similar to this. In fact, I'm sure there are many happening right now, which this description fairly accurately describes. Now, does that mean that all feminist meetings are like this? No, of course not. Feminists come in all shapes and sizes and varying degrees of man-hating. And I imagine the author of this article has never been to a feminist meeting like this one. I'm sure her feminist meetings are fairly different. I'm sure no one has blue hair, and I'm sure no one brings up Amy Schumer's The Leather Special. At least if they have any taste, that is. But that doesn't change the fact that this is still a reasonably accurate description of a certain type of feminist. Particularly the third wavers who inhabit Tumblr or university campuses. Anyway, I wanted to compare those two articles with the two different types of stereotyping, both of which are meant to be comedy. Hopefully you've enjoyed the videos. Keep safe out there, guys, and I'll see you soon.
Would you propose the castration? Would you just round up all the men?
I think we should just round them up and go for it.
What if humanity ended because there was no more men?
Oh, there's still good men. Look around.
Who's a good man? Name one. Who's your favorite politician or celebrity who is your ideal man?
I can't remember the guy's name. Schiff.
Adam Schiff?
Yeah, Adam Schiff. He's an awesome human being.
What?
And so was Jimmy Carter.
What is your favorite quality about Adam Schiff? Why do you think he's a great human being?
Because he's honest and he supports people, all people, not just men, women and everyone, immigrants, everyone, black, white, brown, green, whoever. Thank you.
Thank you for talking with me. I appreciate it.